Firestorm DUOS being announced next week, the new grind game mode coming within 2 weeks, more details on what vehicles to expect from Chapter 5 thanks to some data mining, and the opportunity to win as many as 4 Nvidia RTX 2080 Ti's. This is your week on the battlefield. Welcome to this episode of This Week on the Battlefield, the show where we cover news, updates, the community, and so much more, all around the Battlefield franchise. In this episode then we have the grind game mode and Firestorm DUOS to talk about, of course the Armory and BOINS update that we got this week, some more interesting information around what vehicles to expect in Chapter 5, thanks to some data mining giving us detailed looks at all the different tanks, transport, aircraft, and sea vehicles that we most likely will see in the update. In community news we have the OnlyInBattlefield Nvidia Contest, and some very interesting Halvøy conquest concepts that have been further developed since last week's episode. And of course, to round everything off, some brilliant OnlyInBattlefield moments for you guys to enjoy. To start things off then, of course, this week we got an update to Battlefield 5, which with the exception of the increased spread of loot in Firestorm and the added collision there, to make at least temporarily looting slightly more, well, practically doable if your enemy has plentiful loot, we really only saw a number of patches and fixes in this week's update. No major changes to weapon balance, no major changes to game mechanics, and certainly no major additions in content. That is, of course, unless you consider cosmetics and the introduction of Battlefield 5's premium currency, an addition of content to the game. At least in terms of cosmetics, I suppose it is. That, of course, has not been met by too much fanfare, especially because it's not only extraordinarily expensive to purchase even something as small and silly as an individual weapon skin, but also because DICE earlier at least gave the indication, or it was understood as such from the fans, that all content would be earnable by some form of in-game currency, company coin, or in-game progression. Now DICE has clarified since that most of the items, even those now currently exclusively purchasable with premium currency, will be earnable by either company coin, so outright being able to buy them, or more likely through progression items or chapter progression later down the line. And only a few select elite skins will actually only ever be exclusively Battlefield BOINS or Battlefield Premium Currency or whatever you wish to call it. So a little bit of a softening down from the current position there, which is good, but nevertheless I join the majority of the community in arguing that not only is this currency extraordinarily expensive for somebody who would have considered otherwise buying a couple of weapon skins or even character skins, but the fact that even now most of the items in there currently are not earnable by some form of in-game progression mechanic, be that in-game currency or some kind of special mission, is personally disappointing, and I would have hoped for, maybe even expected, a little bit more from DICE in that sense. What we did find out this week is that we will be getting announcements surrounding Firestorm's DUOS mode, which of course does supposedly release sometime this month, next week, as early as possibly Monday already, so that should definitely be exciting and I'll be keeping my eyes on that. And we also got news of the grind game mode coming supposedly already in 2 weeks, bringing of course close quarter conquest with reduced flags to maps such as Twisted Steel, Devastation, Rotterdam, and Narvik, supposedly for of course only a limited time mode unless it's popular enough to stick around permanently. Then in more new content news, at least for the far future, and this is truly the far future, we have of course the usual data miners going about their business, once more showing us what is likely to be possible in terms of content wise in Chapter 5. This of course being the introduction of the American and Japanese factions, and supposedly including vehicles such as the M3A3 Sherman tank as well as the T-34 Calilope variant. These of course you will already be familiar with if you remember the last Tiger single player mission where those also made an appearance. We also supposedly should be getting the Type 97 Chi-Ha and the Type 3 Chi-Nu, these being 2 Japanese tanks. And transport vehicles we should be getting the Ford GPW or Willis MB, the staff car, and the Kurogano Type 95, which is a type of Japanese scout car, all relatively small vehicles, so it should be a little bit easier to sneak around on the map with those in hand. In terms of aircraft, we should be getting the Ford F4U Corsair and of course the A6M Mitsubishi Zero, one of the most iconic aircraft from World War II. In terms of sea vehicles, which is of course interesting because it does mean that we're seeing the introduction of naval warfare, we should be getting the Type 2 KA-MI, which is an amphibious tank, some tracked landing vehicles for the Americans, the PT boat or patrol torpedo boat. Think of this as somewhat of an attack boat as we had them in Battlefield 4. Of course, some landing craft and some dinghies thrown in the mix there as well. If you're interested in more details surrounding this, I definitely recommend you check out the Reddit post linked down below in the description from the individual who's gone through the effort to figure all this out and find this in the game data. He's done a great job so far, presenting us with many interesting little snippets of what to expect in the future from Battlefield 5. Over in community news then, we have the OnlyInBattlefield Nvidia Contest running from the 5th to the 19th of April, allowing you to submit clips of 90 to 180 seconds in length, solo or squad, allowing you the chance to win some RTX 2080 Ti's, either for your entire squad if it's a squad clip, or for just yourself if you're a solo player. If you've got any decent Firestorm experiences, definitely make sure to take part in this because, well, an RTX 2080 Ti is quite a graphics card to have, especially if you don't have to pay the horrendous price tag that they demand for it. In other community news, we have some further development of the Halvøy Conquest concepts. I always find it interesting to keep up to date on these, and I find them to be increasingly convincing. I'd also like to know if you guys would like to see me invest some time in a video coming up with a couple of Halvøy map conversion concepts, and if so, let me know down below in the comments which part of the maps you'd probably like me to focus on. With that, of course, we move over to our OnlyInBattlefield moments. And for our first this week, then we have Atom T Bomb showing us how to deal with an enemy at the start of a round when you don't have a weapon and they've picked up a shotgun. Next up then we have Gnome Saying, showing us how to turn helicopters into fireworks in Battlefield 5's Firestorm. In our third clip then, non-Firestorm this time around, we have Oni Blitz showing us how to flank with a sniper rifle, securing himself 2 collats and mopping up a couple of stragglers on the way. And the last clip then in today's lineup, we have Kimito LP getting probably the best starter weapon you could hope for in Battlefield 5's Firestorm. Coming to the end of this week's episode then. If you enjoyed the show, found it interesting or entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share, and of course hit me up with your feedback, suggestions, and opinions down below in the comments or over on Twitter. With that being said, however, I'd like to thank you very much for watching and hope to see you in the next episode this week on the Battlefield.